Good afternoon, my name is Savon Moore, and I just want to kind of start by explaining I have a stutter, so though it's not nerves, it's just kind of my voice. I did my book report on a book called Through the Gates of Splendor, Splendor by Elizabeth Elliot. It was written in 1950. It was written in 1958, and I just think like it's a really good example of faith and of sovereignty and of what it looks like to pursue and to trust in God no matter what. And so to briefly kind of recap this book, 5 men, Jim, Pete, Nate, Ed, and Roger, all like found themselves in Ecuador doing like long-term missions around 1950 to 1954 for like 10 or so years. Jim had been obsessed with the concept of one day reaching a people group called the Alca. I think I believe that that's the way you kind of say it. All 5 men eventually were married. Four of them had young children, and they make contact with this tribe. Things are seemingly going well, and then towards the end of the book, we all learn that they were actually killed by this tribe, and that they did all 5 men lose their lives to this tribe. And I think that for me, I didn't know the story of this book before I read it. And so for me, it was shocking to learn that these men didn't live, because it seemed like they were just so closely following what it seemed like God wanted for them. And it's not to say that God didn't want them to be martyrs, but typically when we think of successful missions, we don't tend to think it is when someone dies. And so kind of pivoting from that, their wives all continued their work, and before the men died, they established some incredible mission stations that that were still used for years. Four of the five wives stayed on to continue their work. And I think in looking back at what they did and just what they accomplished, I think that it's really important to remember and to note that one of their biggest challenges was first and foremost language. I think that for a lot of missionaries now and then, language was and is the first big stepping stone to really connecting with a culture, because to speak the language is to, in a sense, validate someone's culture. It's to validate someone's existence. More of their challenges were just the constant struggle that we all face within missions to give the gospel in a way that makes sense for that culture. And it's not to say that we should change the core of what the gospel says, but it's the call and it's the purpose to truly explain the gospel to the culture that needs it, because the message of Christ should not be defined by the culture of the teacher. It should be explained in the culture of the person learning. I also think a third challenge for them would be just trying to serve and trying to live and trying to be with people that are sometimes not very that are not necessarily welcoming to outsiders. Some of these tribes had very bloody pasts with more Western people, and specifically with white people, as it says in the book. And it's important to note and remember that when we are engaging with a culture that we're not from, it's important to remember that we are the other. We are the strange thing. We are the strange person trying to come in and explain these new truths. And in conclusion, I think that the author did a phenomenal job explaining their story, but also explaining the 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 true and so overwhelming faith and sovereignty that they clung to, and they continue to cling to, that changes this story from pure tragedy to victory. Thank you.